I have already crossed the threshold of 60 years, and like many people my age, I have long been facing issues with blood pressure. It behaves erratically, sometimes reaching 150 and nearly hitting 200. My head feels like it is in a bell, my heart races, and the medicine cabinet is filled with various medications. But it is all in vain. The pills are just a temporary respite. I long to live normally without fearing each new day. Then one day, I met an extraordinary person, a doctor who is 91 years old. Yes, you heard that right, 91. My first thought was that he must have been on medication his entire life. But the doctor laughed and said, "Young man, it is not about the pills, it is about proper nutrition." He shared his experience with me, which turned out to be truly effective. There is no magic, just foods that keep blood pressure at astronaut levels. No chemicals, no side effects, proven over decades of his life. Since then, my diet and most importantly, my well-being have changed significantly. Today, I will tell you what this doctor eats daily to forget about hypertension. These 10 foods are simple, accessible, and truly helpful. The items numbered 5 and 10 are real discoveries, so be sure to watch this video until the end. Also, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more useful health tips. The first product is beetroot. If someone had told me 10 years ago that beetroot would help combat hypertension, I would have been skeptical. Sure, it is a healthy and tasty vegetable, great for borscht, but how is it related to blood pressure? However, the doctor told me something that completely changed my eating habits. Beetroot is not just a vegetable, it is a source of natural nitrates. They convert in the body to nitric oxide, which helps relax and widen blood vessels. Blood flows more easily, pressure decreases, and all this is without medication. Since then, beetroot has become as essential to me as a toothbrush, a must-have element of my morning ritual. I have tried it in all forms, boiled, raw, roasted, but as the doctor said, freshly squeezed beetroot juice works best. It is not advisable to drink it in large gulps, as it may cause stomach discomfort and a sudden drop in blood pressure. I take 1 medium beetroot, peel it, run it through a juicer, which yields about 100 milliliters. Leave it in the refrigerator for half an hour to let the sediment settle, and drink it in the morning 20 to 30 minutes before a meal. Sometimes I add a couple of drops of lemon for better taste and benefits for the blood vessels. If you do not have a juicer, you can grate the beetroot on a fine grater and squeeze it through cheesecloth. Yes, it takes more time, but the result is worth it. After 2 weeks of regular consumption, my morning blood pressure spikes stopped. Instead of 160/95, it is now consistently 130/85, and then 120/80 without a single pill. Yes, I have added other products, which I will discuss later, but beetroot was my first step towards a new life. Please note, if you have kidney problems, urolithiasis, or diabetes, consult with a doctor first, as not everything that is beneficial for one person will be suitable for another. Product number 2, oatmeal, became the next thing I changed, and it transformed my breakfast. Previously, my morning habits were similar to many others. Strong coffee, a sandwich with sausage, and sometimes a fried egg with a crispy crust cooked in butter. Delicious and filling, but after a couple of hours, I would start to experience headaches, and my heart would race. The blood pressure monitor displayed numbers that were far from encouraging. Mornings felt lost. When I shared this with my doctor, who is already 91 years old, he simply smiled. "My friend," he said, "in the mornings, you are fueling your body with impure fuel, but you need pure fuel. Start your day with oatmeal. It is not just porridge, it is a gentle, delicate, and extremely effective cleansing for the blood vessels." The beginning was not difficult. After sausage, oatmeal seemed boring and tasteless, but I decided to give it a try. I started cooking it anew, without sugar. Sometimes, I added a little flaxseed, as the doctor claimed it reduces inflammation and cholesterol levels. Occasionally, I would sprinkle in a pinch of cinnamon, which is also beneficial for blood pressure. Then I began to experiment, adding berries such as blueberries or black currants, a spoonful of honey, or a few walnuts. Once, I even grated a bit of beetroot into it. It turned out unusual but tasty. Within a week, I noticed a change. Mornings became easier, as if my pillow was no longer made of bricks, and my blood pressure stopped spiking. After a month, I felt a surge of energy. My heart was beating more evenly, and my skin looked better, as if my body had been cleansed from the inside. The doctor explained that oatmeal is rich in soluble fiber, which absorbs bad cholesterol, removes it from the body, and reduces the strain on the blood vessels. Additionally, oatmeal contains a lot of magnesium, potassium, and antioxidants, which help normalize blood pressure. The key is to avoid ready-made oatmeal mixes with sugar and flavorings. Only pure oatmeal will provide the desired effect. Now, I cannot imagine my morning without oatmeal, like a day without sunlight. It is a simple and accessible porridge, a powerful support for the blood vessels, especially for those who have accumulated age, excess weight, or blood pressure issues. I wonder, do you have oatmeal for breakfast? Or do you have your own healthy breakfast that helps keep your blood pressure in check? Share in the comments. I might take note of something. Now let's talk about garlic. I have always respected it. In the village, no dish was complete without garlic. I remember my grandmother would rub it on a crust of black bread and say, "This is for you, my grandson, to ward off all illnesses." I would grimace at the sharp smell, but I ate it because I knew my grandmother would not advise anything bad. I grew up, moved to the city, and my village habits faded away. But when I started waking up in the mornings with heaviness in my head, ringing in my ears, and blood pressure of 160/95, I remembered garlic. Pills helped, but not for long. My blood pressure would drop like a teenager on a trampoline. Then, that very 91-year-old doctor with a clear gaze and calm speech asked, "Have you tried garlic, perhaps as a remedy?" I was surprised, of course. I had added it to soup or lard, but as a medicine, it turned out to be quite simple. The allicin contained in garlic helps to dilate blood vessels, lower blood pressure, and thin the blood. Notably, it acts gently, without the use of chemicals or side effects. However, it is important to know how to consume it properly. From that moment on, I began my experiments. First, I prepared a tincture. I finely chopped 1 clove of garlic and poured warm water over it, about half a glass. I let it steep for 15 to 20 minutes. I drank this on an empty stomach, 30 minutes before meals. The taste is specific, and the smell. It is better not to enter an elevator first. But the effect was noticeable. Within a week, I noticed that I was waking up without a feeling of heaviness in my head. The readings on the blood pressure monitor became more stable. After a month, it became a habit. Now I either drink the tincture or eat garlic raw, slicing it thinly and adding it to bread with butter. Sometimes I add it to warm milk with honey, a folk remedy that turned out to be effective for both blood pressure and immunity. There were, however, some nuances. At first, I experienced some discomfort in my stomach. Not severe, but uncomfortable. The doctor advised me to eat it after meals and reduce the dosage. 1 clove a day, at most. The main thing is moderation. Now I know when I have overdone it, as heartburn or burning in the stomach reminds me of that. But if everything is done carefully, garlic truly has miraculous effects. Thus, this simple, accessible product became a real helper for me in maintaining healthy blood pressure. Now, about pumpkin seeds. Previously, I considered them just an autumn amusement. Scoop out the pumpkin, roast them with salt, and crunch them while watching a movie, or give them to children on Halloween. I would never have thought they could become something like medicine for me. When I told the doctor about my frequent chest pains, irregular heartbeats, cold hands, and tingling in my legs at night, he listened carefully and asked about magnesium. I was puzzled. I had never thought about this element. I had heard about potassium and calcium, but magnesium? The doctor explained simply, magnesium is as essential for the heart as gasoline is for a car. It regulates heart rhythm and helps blood vessels relax. A deficiency of magnesium can lead to increased anxiety, palpitations, and restlessness. I asked how to replenish magnesium, perhaps with pills or supplements. He smiled and replied, "The best source is pumpkin seeds. They are rich in magnesium, natural, and easily absorbed. A handful a day, and your heart will be grateful." Since then, there has always been a jar of unsalted, unroasted pumpkin seeds in my kitchen. I buy them at a health food store, just a little so they do not sit around. Sometimes raw, sometimes lightly dried in the oven. The main thing is that they are unsalted and uncoated, like in the shell. I even developed a ritual. In the evening, when all my tasks are done, I turn on some old music, brew chamomile tea, and eat sunflower seeds with a spoon from the cup, as if they were grains. I do not just nibble on them like sunflower seeds. I actually eat them. 2 or 3 tablespoons are quite enough. By the way, the doctor said that sunflower seeds are also rich in zinc, which is especially beneficial for men over 50. So the benefits are twofold, both for the heart and for male vitality. They say they also help with insomnia if eaten a couple of hours before sleep. Is it true that this works? The main thing is not to overindulge, as sunflower seeds, while healthy, are also high in calories. If you do not eat them by the bagful, but consume them in reasonable amounts, they become reliable allies in the fight against hypertension. The 7th product is spinach and greens. If someone had told me 20 years ago that spinach helps lower blood pressure, I would have been skeptical. Spinach, from the cartoon featuring Popeye, was associated with strength, not blood pressure. In our family, greens were mostly used for garnishing dishes, dill in soup, parsley on potatoes. But a doctor in his 90s once simply said, "If you want stable blood pressure without fluctuations, eat greens daily, especially spinach. It is rich in potassium, fiber, and vitamins that strengthen blood vessels." This made me think, as he was a living example. In his 90s, he never mentioned any ailments, but always spoke enthusiastically about salads, smoothies, and greens. I went to the store and bought spinach. At first, I did not know how to prepare it. I ate it raw, which was not very tasty. Then I started adding it to soups, stewed vegetables, and chicken. Eventually, I began making green smoothies with spinach, apple, banana, and water. The drink turned out fresh and light, and my body was grateful. The doctor advised me to include other greens in my diet, such as parsley, cilantro, arugula, and Swiss chard. They gently help remove excess water and salt, lowering blood pressure. It really worked. When I started to view greens not just as a garnish, but as a main dish, I noticed after a couple of weeks that my legs swelled less in the evenings, and my blood pressure monitor showed a stable 125/80. My heart seemed to find peace. Now I always have bunches of greens in my refrigerator. I add them to soups, cereals, salads, and sprinkle them on baked potatoes or buckwheat. In the summer, I pick them fresh from the garden, and in the winter, I grow them on my windowsill. Parsley, dill, and basil have become not just greens for me, but a real green medicine cabinet. The only thing to keep in mind is that greens lose their freshness quickly. It is better to buy them 2 to 3 days in advance and store them in a jar of water or wrapped in a damp cloth. I used to think that a healthy lifestyle was complicated. Now I understand that health lies in simple things. A handful of greens a day, and my blood vessels work calmly, without unnecessary strain. Inside, I feel quieter, more at peace, and more secure. The 6th product is berries. I have warm childhood memories associated with them, picking blueberries in the village, fingers stained with blue, lips purple, and ears full of the buzz of bees. Grandma called us for lunch, while I hid in the bushes and ate until I started to hiccup. Surprisingly, none of us suffered from high blood pressure back then. Neither my grandfather nor my grandmother accepted any medications. They ate their seasonal foods. Now, years later, I return to berries, but this time for health, not just for taste. The doctor recommended consuming berries daily, especially black currants, blueberries, viburnum, and black chokeberries. They contain antioxidants that reduce inflammation, strengthen arterial walls, and normalize blood flow. I remembered how my mother used to brew viburnum with honey when she had a headache. We used to laugh at her grandmother's recipes. Now, I brew it myself. I started adding a handful of berries daily, in the morning to my porridge, in the afternoon to my tea, and in the evening to my cottage cheese. In the summer, I buy fresh berries at the market, and in the winter, I use frozen supplies or buy them at the store. I find viburnum to be the most effective for blood pressure. It has a slight bitterness, but if you pour boiling water over it and add honey, it becomes a drink that literally relieves headaches. Blueberries and black chokeberries make blood vessels elastic and strong. Black currants are rich in vitamins C and K, iron, and many other beneficial substances. After a month of berry therapy, I noticed that my mind became clearer, especially in the mornings. The ringing in my ears disappeared, and my memory improved. Even my wife was surprised, saying it was as if I had become younger. Another pleasant bonus is that berries improve vision, which is a great find for me with my issues. The main thing I realized is that berries are not the preserves in jars, where sugar outweighs benefits, but rather natural tart berries in fresh or frozen form. You can make sugar-free fruit drinks, add them to salads. The options are numerous. What berries do you prefer? Perhaps you have your own family recipe for blood pressure. Be sure to share in the comments. I would love to compare. Product number 7. Fatty fish. I have never been a big fan of fish. The only exception was herring under a fur coat at celebrations or canned fish when I didn't feel like cooking. But fatty fish, such as salmon, mackerel, or sardines, always seemed either too expensive or unsuitable. Until I discussed it with my doctor. My blood pressure seemed under control, but my heart sometimes beat strangely, as if it stumbled. The doctor simply nodded and said I was lacking omega-3. It is like lubrication for blood vessels and valves. Include fatty sea fish in your diet, and in a month, you won't recognize your heart. I thought it was just another trendy diet, but I decided to give it a try. I bought mackerel, baked it in the oven with lemons and herbs, simply without oil or frying. And you know, it turned out delicious. Now every week I consistently have 2 to 3 fish dinners. Sometimes I take canned sardines in oil, make a salad with them, add a bit of greens, a boiled egg, lemon juice, and a complete lunch is ready. And when I have no time at all, I take fish oil in capsules, 2 in the morning with breakfast. Of course, it's not as tasty as baked salmon, but the effect is the same. What has changed? The heavy pressure in my chest after climbing stairs has disappeared. The nighttime arrhythmia is gone, and most importantly, my blood pressure no longer spikes suddenly due to stress. The doctor explained that omega-3 reduces inflammation in blood vessels, improves blood flow, prevents the formation of blood clots, and protects against heart attacks and strokes. This is vital for someone with hypertension. However, there is a nuance. The fish must be fatty and from the sea. Carp and pollock will not provide such an effect. It is better to prepare it without frying or mayonnaise, opting for baking, stewing, or steaming. Now I understand why in Japan and Norway, where they consume a lot of fish, they have fewer heart problems. Then there is the product Tosem, which is a chocolate. When the doctor said that chocolate could help with hypertension, I almost laughed. You might be surprised, but I thought that sweets were only harmful. However, with a kind smile and paternal concern, he explained to me that milk chocolate can be harmful if you eat an entire bar at once. But dark chocolate containing 70% cocoa or more is not just a treat. It is a natural remedy for strengthening blood vessels. Intrigued, I began to study these facts and understand more. It turned out that dark chocolate contains flavonoids, substances that promote improved blood circulation, lower blood pressure, strengthen the walls of blood vessels, and even provide a mild calming effect on the nervous system. And all this is found in a small piece that melts pleasantly in the mouth. Since then, milk chocolate has been excluded from my diet, while dark chocolate has become a part of my regimen as recommended by my doctor. It turned out to be a delicious medicine. How do I consume it? It is quite simple. I have 1 or 2 squares after lunch instead of cookies with tea. Sometimes I add it to my oatmeal to make breakfast not only healthy, but also enjoyable. After just 1 week of this chocolate therapy, I noticed that my blood pressure became more stable and slightly lower, especially during stressful moments. Additionally, I stopped reaching for unhealthy snacks, as a couple of squares of chocolate truly satisfy. In the evening, after a busy day, this sweet ritual has become almost meditative. The doctor immediately warned me that it is important not to overdo it. Not a whole bar, not even half, but a maximum of 15 to 20 grams per day. Be careful. Sometimes, under the guise of dark chocolate, pseudo-chocolate is sold, containing 50% sugar, a small amount of cocoa, and bright packaging. Therefore, pay attention to the ingredients. It should contain at least 70% cocoa, with no added fats or flavorings. Now, dark chocolate for me is a small sweet pill against high blood pressure and bad moods. As for bananas, I have always regarded them as a dessert. My grandchildren love them, my wife bakes muffins with them, and I sometimes snack on them on the go and forget about them. Until an incident occurred that alarmed me. One summer day, my wife and I went to the countryside, where the unbearable heat made my blood pressure rise to 170/100. I had a terrible headache. The tablets did not help, and the second one only made it worse. In the morning, I went to the clinic, where I was referred to the very doctor who changed my perspective on nutrition. He listened to me, reviewed my tests, and with a smile said, "You, my friend, have a potassium deficiency. Without it, your body is like a tool without a handle, uncomfortable and dangerous." And I added, "It is simple. Eat 1 banana a day, and in a couple of weeks you will see a change." I was surprised. Could such a simple and ordinary fruit really affect blood pressure? I decided to give it a try, effortlessly replacing my morning sandwich with a banana, sometimes adding it to my porridge or simply eating it with tea. At first I thought, what difference could 1 banana make? But soon I noticed a difference. I began to crave sweets less. The weakness after lunch disappeared, and my blood pressure stabilized at 125/80. The doctor explained that a banana is an excellent source of potassium, and this mineral helps balance excess sodium in the body. When there is too much sodium, the blood vessels constrict and blood pressure rises, but potassium helps eliminate this like a broom. So what is the secret? Have you ever thought about the amount of potassium in your diet? How often do you eat bananas, daily, or do you consider them just a simple children's snack? Share your thoughts in the comments. However, do not eat 5 bananas a day. This is not a medicine, but a supportive measure. 1 or 2 bananas a day will already bring noticeable benefits, especially in combination with greens, oatmeal, and seeds. Product number 10 is red bell pepper. When the doctor started talking about vegetables, I expected to hear something like carrots, broccoli, or cabbage, but I heard red bell pepper. It turns out this is one of the best foods for blood vessels. The vitamin C content in it is such that you wonder why you only eat it on special occasions. Honestly, I always thought of pepper as just a pretty and crunchy ingredient for salads, but I never imagined that it literally protects blood vessels. The doctor clarified that vitamin C strengthens the walls of blood vessels, makes them more elastic, and reduces the risk of inflammation. It also improves iron absorption and supports the immune system, especially as we age. From that day on, I started eating pepper daily. Sometimes I just slice it and eat it like an apple. Sometimes I bake it with garlic. The aroma fills the whole kitchen, and the taste reminds me of childhood at the dacha. In the heat, I make a simple salad with red pepper, greens, a little lemon juice, and a spoonful of olive oil. And after such a lunch, my blood pressure does not spike, and my energy is abundant. And you know, after a couple of weeks, I noticed a change. Headaches disappeared, my complexion improved, and my blood pressure became steadier, as if everything inside had softened. One day, a neighbor asked me if I was preparing for a vacation, and I smiled and told her that I was just eating pepper. Keep in mind, it is important to eat it raw or baked, but not fried in oil, otherwise most of the vitamin C will be lost. Now there are always 2 or 3 red peppers in my refrigerator. If before I viewed it as just a decoration for salads, Now I see it as an ally in maintaining my health. It has become the finishing touch in my battle against high blood pressure. This is not a panacea, but an important part of the system I built on the advice of an experienced 91-year-old doctor. And looking back, I realized that I was not treating myself. I was restructuring my life. I was not fighting a disease. I was establishing a relationship with my body. Delicious, or I take them with me on the road to avoid the temptation of fast food from the drive-thru. These 10 simple products are not just a list of healthy items, but my daily allies, which have gradually taken me from chronic hypertension to stable readings of 120/80 without pills, without fear and without drastic measures. If you have issues with your blood pressure, try starting with at least 2 or 3 items from this list. Listen to your body. And perhaps one day, just like me, you will wake up with a clear mind and realize that this truly works.